My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and you are listening to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet strategic choices that all of us can make in order to become the better version of ourselves, as well to not just be living, but to feel alive. And the conversation I'm having today with my oldest daughter, Lauren Thompson, is a fantastic conversation about being fully alive. Why? Because we're going to talk about showing up in other people's lives uninvited, creating spaces in our conversation today for others to come into our lives and our homes uninvited. Enjoy this episode today. So Lauren, this is a dream come true to finally have my oldest daughter on our podcast. Thanks for being here today. And it's interesting, we've been kind of toying with a variety of 3-word phrases. And just yesterday, you're like, I want to change my 3 words to be these.
Show up uninvited.
Show up uninvited. How interesting. Share more.
So these words were kind of inspired by a book that I've been going through with a group of women right now by Jenny Allen. And one of the chapters, she really challenges the readers to think about the idea of showing up uninvited in the lives of the people around you. And I think especially in our culture, we kind of have the tendency to feel alone and to feel isolated. And I think especially kind of coming through the COVID pandemic that we have in the last several months, it's become a feeling that we're used to, unfortunately, in the human experience. But I think that everybody wants to feel that connection and wants to feel that closeness to the people around them. And so it's just been challenging. As I was really pondering it, it stuck with me a lot throughout the book of what does it look like to show up uninvited in the lives of the people around me. And even made me wonder to myself, how often am I sitting alone at home feeling isolated? And I have friends who are doing the exact same thing, and neither of us are willing or feeling like we have the confidence to be the first person to reach out. But I think that there's so much good that can come on the other side of that. So I've just been challenged by that idea of what does it look like to show up and to even invite yourself into other people's lives so that you can love them and encourage them and bless them.
Sweetie, I love this. It's a great theme, particularly in light of what you said. We're coming out of this global pandemic where we're feeling isolated. I mean, I say it all the time that the 2 things we most long for in the human experience is to be fully known and to be unconditionally loved, which has been really, really hard. And even as you talk about showing up uninvited, I guess some of our listeners and viewers might be thinking, well, that just feels like I might be an inconvenience. But I'm guessing when we do that, folks aren't feeling inconvenienced. They're feeling blessed. But it does require a certain amount of confidence. You shared it.
Yeah.
This confidence that I'm feeling good enough in my own skin to actually take this risky step forward. But it's less risky when we just kind of acknowledge the reality in our world today that we all are feeling a little bit alone and wanting to have a deep connection. As you share this as you share this principle with me, I was thinking back to the summer of 1990, actually the very same summer where I met your mother in Ocean City, New Jersey. I also met a dear friend of mine, Rick Jones is his name. And he was someone who was there. We were at a leadership project on the coast, and I just was really wanting to make a connection with him because I just admired so many things about his life. But I didn't know how to do that because there wasn't really that natural opportunity. He didn't invite me into his world. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just take a bold step and just say, Rick, I want to be your friend. I want to actually be friends with you. And it felt a little weird.
Absolutely.
It was definitely not invited. And what happened and what transpired out of that was this fantastic friendship. He actually stood with me in the wedding to your mother. Mm-hmm. And it was really a very significant friendship that began with maybe not invited, but an initiative that I took. And I think about even my desire to be in close community with so many people and to really value friendship in general. Most of the significant friendships, now that I'm thinking about it as you share these principles, most of the significant friendships in my life where when I took the initiative, when I took a risk, when I kind of built up the confidence and the courage to kind of step into places with people and to have those conversations. But I'm guessing even for you, sweetie, that some of your closest relationships have probably been a result of your initiative.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Either the initiative of me or the initiative of one of my friends who was willing to be the one to kind of step out and do that. And like how you shared that, you know, one of our tendencies to not do that is because we feel like we're inconveniencing other people. And so it was a good reminder for me as I was thinking about this concept was to know that like, if I have a friend who shows up at my house, that often doesn't feel inconvenient to me. A lot of times we're craving that, and we're wanting those other people to show up. And so just reminding myself, like, if I feel that way, I need to trust that my friends and family members feel the same way. And that's going to be received when we are stepping out in boldness for the people around us.
Well, and you know me in acrostics, and I was thinking about this idea, even as you're talking about him being inviting, and creating spaces. And I know we'll talk about this in a minute, but part of it is if I'm going to show up uninvited, there needs to be something true of me inside of me before I can actually pull that off. So I was thinking about what does it look like to have a rich personality, to be relaxed, to be inviting, to be confident, and to be hospitable. Because in many ways, as I was thinking about that, and even as I knew we were going to talk about this today, I was like, wow, I want to be an inviting person, but I'm going to need to be pretty relaxed then, because if I'm going to just step into someone's life uninvited, I'm going to have to be open to some spontaneity. I'm going to have to be open to maybe adjusting my schedule for the day or what I intentionally or maybe early decided that I was going to do and actually step into their world. But I also want to be hospitable. I don't want to be confident. Like, I'm okay. Maybe they're not available right now. Or maybe, quite honestly, they're hurting and they're going to build a wall. Because I'm sure that's a possibility, right? If you step into someone's life uninvited, they might throw up a wall and say, no, I don't want you to be in my world because I'm really hurting right now. And yet to be okay with that. But I'm guessing 9 times out of 10, it's exactly what you describe. And that people are going to be like, oh, Lauren reached out to me. Lauren took the initiative with me. Lauren expressed care and concern and compassion for me, or even just was inquisitive of me. How are you doing? Really? And we're blessed by that. I know you'd also talk to me a little bit about this idea that not only just stepping into people's lives to bless, encourage, and love them without being invited to do so, right? But also creating spaces where people feel like they could do that with you.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about that.
And that's where I like what you shared in your acrostic is that in order to have the confidence to show up in other people's lives, you do need to have those things that are true about you. You need to be secure in who you are. You need to be, you know, all those things that you shared. I know for me as a very planned and structured person, that can be a challenge sometimes. Sure. But that flexibility and that spontaneity is so important. And like you said, on the flip side of that, I want to be the type of person that the people in my life feel like they can show up uninvited, not only in my emotional space, but in the physical space of my home, that they feel safe, not only with their hearts to share what they're going through, to share their struggles or their joys, but they also feel like they can just physically show up in my home. And sometimes I think I have the tendency to overthink that. I love being a host. I'm really passionate about hospitality, but it doesn't have to be something that we overthink. You know, I don't need to have a hot meal coming out of the oven, and I don't need to have, you know, fresh cookies or anything like that. You know, it's as simple as, you know, offering a cup of coffee, opening the door. It might look like sitting down and playing on the floor with my son. But I think that can be really powerful when you just invite people into your space and help them feel safe.
And I'm wondering now, particularly being a young mom, and the mother of my oldest grandchild. You're my oldest daughter, and you provided my first grandchild, first daughter, first grandchild. Awesome. But I'm wondering, even as you share that with Noah now, there might be folks who are like, well, I can't just show up at Lauren and Dylan's house because what if he's taking a nap or what if it's inconvenient? But I'm guessing, again, all the more, it's like we're craving that connection. And obviously you have more freedom in your schedule at this point as a stay-at-home mom, but you're also craving opportunities for human connection. So, it's interesting, you know this, and I'll share this with our viewers and our listeners, but in my work at Bowling Green State University with student athletes, we really long to be a family away from home. And we long to be, when they come and are involved with us, and even as their life coach and their sports psychologist, I want them to feel like they can come by our house any time they want. In fact, your mother and I actually spoke to the football team. It would have been before the pandemic, and she came and was sharing with me to all of them, the 105 young men on this team. And your mother shared with them the two rules to being connected to our family. Rule 1 is that if you are going to come over to our house, which you're invited anytime, the first rule is you come unannounced. You don't put the phone call in first. You don't send a text saying, Can I come over? You literally show up.
Yep.
Second rule is when you get there, you do not ring the doorbell. You do not knock on the door. You walk right through that front door and you say, and in fact, I do this now even with student athletes from all various teams. What do you say when you show up at the Browns house? And they all say with one voice, I'm home. Now, some students would never do that. But just the fact that we've communicated that, like we really long to do that. In fact, your mother, similar to you, is a very planned and organized person. So we've talked about what does that look like? How do we do that? Because what if 10 football players show up on some given day and she's like, but I don't have a meal prepared. Yep. So we've already agreed. Well, then you just get on the phone, you order a pizza or you grab, and this happened before. So one time I was in Austin, Texas on a trip, on a business trip. And I called home and I was like, how are things going? And she said, Daquan, Joniah are here. They're hanging out with the kids. They're skateboarding in the front yard and she's pulling out chips. She's pulling out snacks. I'm like, wait, I'm missing all the fun. They just showed up, which initially could feel a little bit like, oh, that feels awkward. But it ends up being one of Jameson, your younger brother's favorite memories. And mom loved it. Once we get used to that, creating, because what you're suggesting, which I think is so amazing, it's countercultural.
Absolutely.
It's countercultural, not to only to step into other people's lives uninvited emotionally, but also to create a space where you can say, we may not have a full course meal ready on the table when you show up, but you are always welcome here in this space. And in those rare occasions where that's happened with us, where people just show up, yeah, we might have been doing something. We might have had other plans, but it just is so awesome. It's a little countercultural. It's a little bit like, oh, how can we do this? But once you prioritize relationships and human connection over being ready, being organized, which is what you're suggesting. You're suggesting to open wide your heart and to open wide your home to be able to provide that kind of space, particularly during a time when people are craving human connection.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
No, just love everything that we've been able to talk about today. And yeah, I love just some of the themes that we've grown up in our home and just being challenged with some of those things. And it's been fun for my husband and I to start to talk about as we're building our own family. What does it look like for us to implement some of these principles in our own home? And yeah, when I say show up uninvited, it's something that I truly mean for my friends, for my family, even for people who feel like they might not know me well. We want to figure out what that looks like to really open our homes, to open our hearts, as you said. And knowing that there is something very real and vulnerable about that.
Yeah, there is.
But there's something beautiful about being able to welcome people into some of those messy places of your lives. And like I said, if somebody shows up uninvited, that might mean we're sitting on the floor while my son crawls around and playing with him. But there's something just so authentic about that I think we crave, and that I think we need in our relationships.
You said it best, sweetie. Authenticity. Authentic. I think we're craving not only connection, but we're craving authentic connection where I can be known, where I can be in the spaces and places that feel not like a house, but a home, where I can be in relationships that feel safe and not sterile. Because again, in this day and age of everything on social media and everything looks positioned in this angle and this coloring and quite honestly, so much of our lives is edited. Mm-hmm. You mentioned messiness.
Yeah.
Entering into the messiness, being comfortable with the messiness. What you're suggesting to show up uninvited means there might be mess in my life, but also in my space. Thanks for inspiring me today. If I can share with our viewers and our listeners, even in light of my conversation with my daughter today, during a time in our lives, and even in a history within our country where we're spending a lot of energy and money building privacy fences around our homes so that nobody sees in, as well as building emotional walls between us as human beings because someone might feel differently about a particular issue or might be different than what we're accustomed to. Let's bring down the walls. Let's bring down the fences, not just around our hearts, but around our homes, and open our lives up, open our homes up, and really be accessible to the humans around us, our friends, our family, maybe even strangers, community members, colleagues. I mean, we could go on and on with this conversation, but what does it look like to have the courage, the confidence, to have an inviting spirit, and to be truly hospitable where we're willing to show up uninvited. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.